From the kitchen of the cabin, it's the 5 Games for Doomsday review. Wards of London. God, I wish I wasn't a reflection of my age. Sure, there are some good things about living at the beginning of this century, Drag Race for one, but I don't see how history will have any choice but to look upon these times with anything other than derision. That is, if reflecting on the past will be the leisure pursuit of choice in the 15 minutes you get off between hacking someone's skull open with a cow's jawbone for food. The opening section of 2001? That's the future. Among the many corrupt legacies that religion has bequeathed upon us is the moronic conception that we're not animals. I once asked my university class to put up their hands if they thought that human beings were animals, and almost none of them did. These are people who, I assume, defecate every day, get wildly angry over nothing, and have a constant, uncontrollable throb in their crotch, and still don't think they're animals. The issue with any assumption of exceptionalism is that it results in awful and often murderous decisions, and an indulgence of one's own crapulence. See fucking Brexit for further details. If we had come to terms with the reality of our id 10,000 years ago, rather than insisting on some elevated superego, perhaps we wouldn't be facing the extinction of our species because we simply have to have strawberries in the winter. While the concept of spiritual dualism is clearly bullshit, I'm able to recognise intellectually the drawback in indulging every fleeting impulse and simultaneously find myself incapable of doing anything about it. The neoliberal brainwashing has worked on me. Even in my penurious state, I accrue more and more, and even in my penurious state, I want more and more. The board game industry shares my appetite, not just in the production of new games, but in adding to old ones. We have to keep the printing presses going or everything collapses. Wards of London is an addition to Guilds of London that adds a new dimension to play, but robs the original of the intensity and bite that made it so good. In Wards of London, players are still trying to dominate guilds, but the city has been split up into separate wards. This limits where a player can place their liverymen to their own wards or the wards to their left or right. After the 6th round, neutral wards will emerge that can be fought over, though the placement constrictions still apply. On top of this, there are new tokens that can be earned that prevent the placement of neutral liverymen, and coins that can be spent instead of cards. I rarely talk about production problems in these reviews, but there are such glaring errors in the production of this expansion that it would be remiss of me not to. Firstly, although there are components for a 5th player in the box, this production will not provide you with all you need to play for 5 players. In my play, when the neutral wards emerged, there was a major shortfall in the second place markers that are so crucial to play. Over a third of the new tiles were unable to be covered. And this was using all of the tokens from the base game and the expansion. This renders the game essentially unplayable at 5. Secondly, the rulebook suffers from the curse of familiarity. Guilds of London is an icon-heavy game, and there are many new ones that are introduced in the new expansion, but most of them aren't explained in the rulebook. It seems that there is an assumption that people will just get it. I didn't, and I've played the base game a lot. I cannot testify to the development of this expansion, but it seems inconceivable to me that this was blind play-tested, as there is so much missing from the rulebook. I had the good fortune to be able to message the designer to get the answers. Most won't, and most will be frustrated. Wards of London fundamentally changes the character of the game. With the introduction of personal wards, especially after the neutral ones have come into play, the feeling of scarcity is lost. This makes Guilds a far less vicious game. It becomes much more of a war with your own mind rather than that of your opponents. There is still the wonderfully tricky puzzle of how to play your cards in the right order, but the tension that the rug will be pulled from under you has been removed. Also, the introduction of the coins lessens the impact of one of the most delicious decisions in the game. There is agony in deciding which card to discard. There is teeth in this decision, and I don't want my games gummy. The game is still good, but it's looser, it's easier. If you like less player interaction, less targeted meanness, then this might be for you. It wasn't for me. I understand the compulsion to expand games to capitalise on success, but also judiciousness needs to be exercised when knowing when to leave well enough alone. I love Guilds of London. It's still one of my favourite games and my favourite from Tony Boydell, but I won't play it with the expansion. In this case, less is certainly more. Thank you for listening. and this review was made possible by the support of my patrons. You can become one too at patreon.com/5G4D.